12 Utes lost serious money in Australia between 2025 and 2026. And over the next half hour, I'm going to hand you the actual figures. What each one cost new, what it's worth now, and the specific decision that moved the number. Not vibes, not a general moan about the market. 12 nameplates, 12 mechanisms, and in most cases, a date you can point at. Here's the part that annoys me, and it's the thread running through the whole list. Almost none of these Utes lost value because they wore out. They lost it because somebody in an office changed a price on a website, and every example already sitting in a driveway got repriced at the same instant. No notice, no letter. You find out when a dealer looks at your Ute, looks at his screen, and offers you a number that makes you laugh. I've been around dual cabs long enough to have watched the trade-in ritual from both sides of the desk. The appraisal isn't really an inspection. The number is largely decided before your Ute rolls in. A valuation feed, a stock position, and what the same thing costs brand new that week. The bloke with the torch and the paint gauge is confirming a figure, not finding one. 3 things to hang on to while we go. Number 6 is the Ute that everybody in this country believes holds its value better than anything else, and I've got the retention figure that shows the belief is now actively costing people money. Number 10 had its price cut 4 separate times in 7 months by the company that built it. 4. And number 12 is the one where the maker took $13,000 off the new price in a single announcement, and owners who'd bought one 9 months earlier found out about it from a news article. Let's get into what actually happened. First, the shape of the thing, because without this, the rest is just a list of sad numbers. Depreciation used to be a physical process. A Ute got older, the paint got chalky, the bushes went, the odometer climbed, and the value walked down a fairly predictable slope. You could look at a 3-year-old dual cab and make a decent guess within a couple of grand, and the guess would hold for months. That's not what's been happening. What's been happening since 2025 is administrative. The 4-wheel drive Ute segment has been shrinking. Reported down around 8% across the first quarter of 2026. Then more than 15% in April alone, with different outlets putting the full year slide anywhere from 11 to 20%, depending on which months and which body styles they counted. Sources genuinely disagree on the depth, so take the conservative reading. The market is down hard, and it's getting worse as the year goes. Now add the fuel. The Strait of Hormuz shut in early 2026, and diesel went vertical. The Australian Institute of Petroleum had the national diesel average peaking around $3.19 a litre in April. Other reporting put the peak nearer $3.10 in late March. Sydney servos were showing more than that. The federal government halved the fuel excise from the 1st of April, dropping it from 52.6 cents to 26.3, and even with that discount, diesel stayed above $2.40, so fewer buyers terrified of diesel walking into showrooms full of unsold stock. Every manufacturer reached for the same lever. They cut new prices, and the moment you cut the price of the new one, the used one is worth less, because nobody pays $60 for a 2-year-old version of a thing. You can buy new for $65. That's the comparison I want you carrying through all 12. Wear versus repricing. One is honest, and you can plan around it. The other lands overnight, and there's nothing you can do. Number 1. The Mitsubishi Triton GSR. The current generation Triton arrived here in 2024, and it's a genuinely competent Ute, bigger, stronger, better than the one it replaced. It's also been discounted almost continuously since, which is the part that matters for anyone who bought one early. By the start of 2026, Mitsubishi was offering the GSR dual cab from around $62,000 drive away against a list price near $64,500 before on-roads. Once you account for stamp duty and rego, that's close to a $10,000 swing. Come the end of the financial year, they went again, with drive-away pricing across the range and $2,000 of fuel cards on remaining prior year stock. If you're a private seller with a lightly used GSR, you are now competing with a brand new one. Full warranty, 10 years of it if you service on schedule, for a couple of grand more than you're asking. You lose that fight every single time. The Ute didn't get worse. The gap closed underneath it. That one's mild by the standards of this list. Number 2 is where the ground gets softer, because it involves an engine that no longer exists. Number 2, the Volkswagen Amarok, with the 4-cylinder bi-turbo diesel. The Amarok shares its bones with the Ford Ranger, and when Ford dropped the 2-litre bi-turbo from the Ranger lineup for the 2026 model year, Everyone who follows this stuff knew what was coming for the Amarok's TDI 500 grades. Volkswagen has been steering the range hard toward the 3-litre V6 and a Walkinshaw engineered flagship. That leaves the 4-cylinder cars in a specific kind of limbo. Not unsupported, parts and servicing are fine, but discontinued, which in the used market is a story, and stories move money. Meanwhile, the Run-Out Drive-Away campaign put brand new prior model year Amaroks from around 56,000, with the live TDI 500 near 60. You're asking a buyer to take an out-of-production engine, used with a chunk of warranty gone, at a price that has to sit well under a new one. Not disastrous, just relentless. Number 3 is short, and it's short because there isn't much to say beyond the arithmetic. Number 3, the old D23 Nissan Navara, replaced in March 2026 by the new D27, which is a Mitsubishi Triton underneath with Nissan panels and locally tuned suspension. Nissan couldn't shift 10,000 Navaras in 2024, and the D23 had been on sale a very long time by the end. So the outgoing car is now both discontinued and superseded by something with a different set of mechanicals in a segment that's shrinking. Private buyers are cautious about it. Dealers are more cautious again. It's the quietest kind of value loss. Nothing dramatic, just an offer that keeps coming in lower than the last time you checked. By the way, whether you drive a Ute, a 4WD, or one of the newer Chinese cars hitting Australian roads, keeping it reliable comes down to what you do before the problems start. That's why I put together the 500,000 kilometre Car Care Bible. It covers 101 habits that can help your vehicle last longer, the warning signs you should never ignore, and how to spot workshop upsells that quietly drain your wallet. To get your copy, just scan the QR code on screen with your phone's camera or use the first pinned comment below. Number 4 is louder because it happened to the best-selling vehicle in the country. Number 4, the Ford Ranger XLT with the 2-litre bi-turbo. The Ranger has been Australia's top-selling vehicle for years, and it still is. It also had a rough 2026. 4x4 Ranger sales were down between 7 and 9% across the first 4 months, depending on whose cut of the VFAX data you read. Ford's response from the 1st of April was a $4,000 fuel card on new stock. Time to land with the excise cut, plus a further $1,000 for registered farmers. And I want you to sit with what a $4,000 fuel card does to your used Ute. It is functionally $4,000 off the new one. A buyer comparing your 2-year-old XLT to a brand new one now has $4,000 of free diesel on the other side of the ledger. You have to move to meet it, or you don't sell. Then there's the engine. The bi-turbo 4 is gone for the 2026 model year, replaced across the range by the single turbo. The V6 cars are fine. The entry-level V6 dual cab has been running around 64.5 drive away in New South Wales, which is its own problem for anyone selling a used one. But the bi-turbo now carries that discontinued flag, and the used market is unsentimental about flags. Right. 4 in, and you can already see the pattern. Not one of these Utes did anything wrong. Every single loss so far was inflicted from above, by a discount, a run-out, or a deletion. That's the mild half of the list. From here it gets sharper, because we move from Utes that were quietly undercut to Utes that were openly repriced while their owners watched. And number 6 is the one I flagged at the start. The Ute this entire country treats as a savings account. Number 5, the Isuzu D-Max X Terrain. The D-Max built its reputation on being the sensible one. Simple, tough, well-warranted, capped price servicing at a fair number. And for years the X Terrain held its money about as well as anything in the segment. Then 2026 arrived. Isuzu joined the discount war and the X Terrain landed around 70,000 drive away after roughly $9,000 came off, varying by state. On top of that, Isuzu swapped the entry-level 1.9-litre diesel for a more powerful 2.2 with an 8-speed auto in late 2025, partly to improve the thing and partly to deal with the new vehicle efficiency standard. That second bit is the one people miss. When a maker changes a powertrain for emissions compliance, the older powertrain doesn't just become old, it becomes the one that couldn't meet the standard. Buyers pick that up faster than you'd expect, even if they can't tell you why they'd rather have the new one. Which brings me to the Ute everybody in Australia will argue with me about. Number 6, the Toyota HiLux. Here's the flag number. Across a 5-year hold, current market data has the HiLux retaining roughly 61 to 63% of its value, depending on grade. The SR5 at the top of that range, the Rogue and Rugged X a couple of points under. That's still a good result in absolute terms. It's just no longer the best result in the segment. And for a lot of people, that changes the maths on why they paid the Toyota premium in the first place. Now stack the 2026 events on top. Toyota launched the new look HiLux in December 2025, and the entry price jumped by more than $6,000, with the range cut from 26 variants down to 16. The 2.7 petrol and the 2.4 diesel were both dropped, leaving the 2.8 across the board, with 48-volt assistance on the higher automatic 4x4s. A price rise on the new one should support used values. It usually does. It didn't, because of what happened next. HiLux sales fell about 27% year on year in April 2026 as diesel went through the roof. A ute that isn't selling new doesn't hold used value no matter what the sticker says, because dealers stop wanting them in stock, and dealers set the trade-in number. I'll be straight about the limits here. Retention percentages get calculated differently by different firms. Some use auction data, some use retail listings, some use trade-in offers, and they don't agree with each other. What I'd take from it is directional, not precise. The HiLux is still one of the better performers, and it is no longer the automatic answer. If you bought one purely because a HiLux holds its money, that reasoning has been quietly overtaken. We're half a dozen deep, and I know some of you are recalculating something in your head right now. If this is landing, subscribe. The whole point of this channel is the number nobody puts in the brochure, because the back half is where the real damage is, and number 10 is where a manufacturer cut its own Utes price 4 times inside 7 months. Number 7, the JSE T9. Quick one and brutal. From January to July 2026, 494 T9s were reported sold in Australia, down about 51% year on year. That makes it the slowest selling diesel 4x4 ute in the country that's still actually on sale. Jack's own people have pointed at the fuel crisis and at tough competition, and a re-engineered version with a stronger engine and Australian-tuned suspension is coming, but possibly not for another year or more. So if you own one, your ute is the current version of something the maker has publicly said needs fixing. That is not a helpful sentence to have attached to your asset. Number 8, the LDV T60. The T60 has always been the price fighter. It does the job, it's cheap, and it's honest about what it is. Roughly 214 went out the door in April 2026, from about 45,000 before on-roads. The trouble for existing owners is that the budget end of this market is the most crowded part of it. There are more than 20 utes on sale here now against about 5 a few years ago. When the thing you own competes purely on price, and half a dozen new competitors arrive underneath you every year, your used value has nowhere to stand. Number 9, the BYD Shark 6. This one's more interesting than a straight write-down, and I want to be careful because the Shark hasn't been here long enough for clean multi-year data. The Shark 6 is Australia's first plug-in hybrid dual cab, and it has been a genuine hit, the best-selling electrified ute in the country, outselling several established diesel nameplates outright. Launch pricing put the premium at $57,900 before on-road costs. Then look at what a used one does. A 2025 premium with about 35,000 kilometres has been sitting on the classifieds around 51,000, excluding government charges. That's a first-year loss in the region of 15 to 20%, depending on what you actually paid drive away. For a brand new nameplate from a brand new brand in a collapsing segment, that's not bad at all. It's roughly what a well-regarded diesel does. But BYD has been running promotions that waive on-road costs entirely. The premium at $57,900 drive away instead of plus on-roads, which is about $4,500 of value, plus cashback offers on other grades. Every time that happens, the used ones step down to match. My read, and I'll mark this as my read, not a fact, is that the Shark is holding better than it should because it's the only ute in Australia whose running costs got dramatically better exactly when fuel got dramatically worse. That's a demand story, and demand stories can reverse. I wouldn't bank on it. Stop and look at what's changed in the last 3 items. Up to number 6, we were talking about diesel utes being undercut by discounts on other diesel utes. From 7 onward, every single one is losing value to a technology shift, the market walking away from what it's built on. That's a different and much harder problem because you can wait out a discount cycle. You can't wait out a fuel crisis. And for scale, before we hit the last three, the worst ute in Australian history for this isn't even on the list. The LDV ET60, the first factory electric ute sold here, launched at 92,900 before on-roads. About 100 grand drive away. Early examples with normal kilometres have been advertised used in the low 30s. That's the ceiling of what this can do to a person, and the next three got closest to it. Number 10, the GWM Cannon Alpha plug-in hybrid. Here's the promise I made you at the start. It launched in February 2025 at 63,990 drive away for the entry Lux. In April, it moved to just under 60 before on-roads. In June, it came down again. In July, 57,490. By September, it was 53,490 drive away. 4 cuts, 7 months, $10,500 off the entry price of a ute that had been on sale less than a year. The top spec Ultra came down by the same rough amount over the same window. Now put yourself in February 2025. You've done your homework, you like the thing. 3.5 tons of towing, a proper electric range, a long warranty. You sign at 64 grand drive away. By September, someone walks into the same dealership and drives out in the same ute for 53.5. You have not driven it badly, you have not damaged it, you have done 7 months of ordinary kilometres, and you are more than $10,000 underwater on the new price benchmark alone, before a single cent of normal depreciation gets added on top. If you're on finance with a balloon at the end, this is where it stops being an abstraction. The balloon was set on the original price, using a residual assumption written before any of those cuts existed. Fair warning, I'm not a finance broker, and I don't write these contracts. If that's your situation, get someone who does to look at your numbers. But the shape of it is simple enough. A fixed final payment against a value that moved is exactly how people end up owing more than the ute is worth. Number 11, the Ford Ranger plug-in hybrid, which is now called the Ranger Hybrid. Ford launched the plug-in Ranger at 71,990 before on-road costs for the entry XLT. Real money, call it 78 or so drive away in Sydney once you'd paid everyone. It didn't sell. Not badly exactly, but nowhere near the Shark 6, which was doing several thousand units while the plug-in Ranger stayed a tiny fraction of Ranger volume. So Ford rebuilt the offer. During the fuel crisis, they went to 62,000 drive away. Then they made it permanent, deleted the XLT grade entirely, and introduced a new entry XL at 59,000 drive away. With more equipment than the car it replaced, in some respects. The Wild Track went from just under 80 before on-roads to 70,000 drive away. Depending on which grade you compare and which state you're in, that's somewhere between $13,000 and $19,000 of repositioning on a ute that had been on sale barely a year. Ford's local boss described the period as short-term pain at the pump and said they'd sharpened their pencils to look after customers. I'd only point out which customers. The pencil sharpening went to the next buyer. The person who paid $72,000 at launch got the rename. And here's the small cruelty on top. The badge changed. Your ute says PHEV, the new ones say hybrid. To a buyer scrolling classifieds at 9 o'clock at night, that reads as the old one. It isn't. The mechanicals carried straight over, same 2.3 turbo petrol, same electric motor, same tow rating, but you'll spend the whole sale explaining that, and every explanation costs you money. Number 12, the Kia Tasman. This is the one, and it's the one I'd point at if somebody asked me to explain the whole of 2026 in a single vehicle. Kia came into the ute market with a target of 20,000 a year in Australia. To the end of April 2026, the Tasman had recorded 1,658 registrations for the year. Over the same period, the Ranger was near 16,000 and the HiLux over 13,000. Kia's local boss said publicly that they knew what had gone wrong and now had to work out how to fix it, which, credit where it's due, is a more honest sentence than you usually get from a car company. The fix was price. In May 2026, drive-away pricing was slashed across most of the range. The flagship X Pro dropped to 64,990 drive-away, down 13,000 from its 74,990 before on-roads launch price. The X-Line came down about 11,000 to 59,990. The SX Plus fell 11.5 to 54,990. The SX dropped 6.5. On the size of that headline cut, sources vary. Some reported up to 15,000, and in Western Australia, the X Pro cut was 14. I've used 13 because it's the figure that holds across the most states, and when the numbers disagree, I'd rather understate it. Understated, it's still savage. At 65 drive away, the X Pro now undercuts a HiLux SR5 and an X-Terrain. It sits level with the cheapest V6 Ranger dual cab, a Ute with steel wheels and cloth seats. Now the owner's side, you bought an X Pro at launch. You paid something around 80,000 on the road. 9 months later, the identical Ute, same build year, in many cases literally the same stock, is 65 drive away. You've lost roughly $15,000, and your Ute is still under its original warranty with a first service on it. Nobody rang you. There was no letter. Kia's new chief executive later defended the cuts by saying the brand was meeting the market and wouldn't sit on the sidelines while others discounted, which is a perfectly reasonable thing for a car company to say. It's just not an answer to the person holding the old price. And I'll admit the thing nobody has explained properly, why the Tasman was priced where it was to begin with. It's a competent Ute. Everyone who's driven one says the interior is genuinely good. Yet it launched above rivals with far deeper reputations, into a segment that was already turning. I've read a lot on this and I haven't seen a straight answer. Best I can offer is that the pricing was locked in a long time before the market it landed in existed. Now, the part I actually want you to take away, because it's the same in every one of those 12 stories. Somebody has been selling you a number that only ever moves in their favor and calling it a price. Recommended retail price, drive-away price, two of the most reassuring phrases in Australian retail, and I want you to take them apart because you were never told whose recommendation it was or when it expires. Here's the mechanism. The recommended retail price is the number your finance contract was written against. It's the number the residual or balloon was calculated from. It's the number your insurer used to set the agreed value. It's the number the valuation guides anchor to. Your entire financial position in that Ute is built on it. And it is the one number in the whole transaction that the manufacturer can change unilaterally at any time without telling you and without any obligation to anybody who already bought one. GWM changed it 4 times in 7 months. Ford moved it 13,000 and renamed the car. Kia took 13 off in one announcement. Then there's the second half of the trick, and this is the elegant bit. Most of those cuts weren't cuts to the recommended retail price at all. They were drive-away campaigns, limited time offers, valid until the 30th of June unless extended, which means on paper nothing officially happened. The list price sits there untouched, so nobody has to acknowledge a price reduction. So nobody has to explain themselves to the people who paid the old one. The offer just quietly gets extended, and it becomes the actual price of the car without ever being called that. You ate the difference, every dollar of it. Not because your Ute changed, but because a marketing calendar did. And notice what the industry offered you instead. Fuel cards? Ford put $4,000 of diesel on the table. Mitsubishi did 2. GWM did 4. Those are decent offers for the next buyer. For the person already holding a Ute that just lost 15 grand, the answer was nothing. There is no mechanism anywhere in this market by which the manufacturer that repriced your asset shares any part of that with you. I'm not calling that a conspiracy. It's an incentive with nobody on the other side of it. The person who already paid can't be sold to twice, so they don't appear anywhere in the decision. That's the whole explanation, and it's colder than a conspiracy would be. The advantage is that you can see it now. When a salesperson tells you a Ute holds its value, you know that's a statement about the past. When they show you a drive-away price, you know it's a promotion with a date on it, not a flaw. And when someone says the discount is a limited time offer, you now know what it usually becomes. Step back a second, because there's something here beyond Utes. We've been trained to outsource the question of what things are worth. There's a guide, an app, an instant online offer, a valuation feed, and all of them are telling you the same thing, which is what somebody else recently paid. That's useful information. It is not the same as knowing what a thing is worth to you. The people who came out of the last 2 years in decent shape mostly weren't the ones who picked the right badge. They were the ones who bought a Ute that genuinely suited the work, paid a price they could justify without a resale assumption propping it up, and then kept it long enough that the market's mood stopped mattering. They made the value themselves in kilometres and jobs done, rather than borrowing it from a forecast. Judging worth is a skill, and like every skill, it atrophies when you let a machine do it. The bloke who can look at a ute, know what it'll do, know what it'll cost him to run, and put his own number on it. Nobody can reprice that man. That's not a moral position about cars. It's just the difference between owning something and holding a position in it. Right. Practical in order. The 12, briefly, Triton GSR, undercut by its own discounts. Amarok 4-cylinder, orphaned engine. Old Navara, discontinued and superseded. Ranger bi-turbo, deleted powertrain, plus $4,000 of free fuel on the new one. D-Max X-Terrain, $9,000 off the new price, and an emissions-driven engine change. HiLux, still good, no longer untouchable, and sales down sharply. JAC T9, sales halved and a fix publicly promised. LDV T60, drowning in cheaper new rivals. Shark 6, holding up better than expected, but propped by on-road cost giveaways. Cannon Alpha Feachev, 4 cuts and more than $10,000 in 7 months. Ranger Feachev, repositioned by up to $19,000 and renamed. Tasman, $13,000 off in one announcement. Now the thing to actually do tonight at the kitchen table. 3 steps, and it takes about 20 minutes. 1. Find what the equivalent new one costs today, drive away, including whatever campaign is running this month. Not the list price, the number a stranger would pay this week. 2. Find 3 genuine sold prices for your year, grade, and kilometres. Sold, not asking. Asking prices are wishes. Sold prices are facts. And dealer used listings that have been sitting for months are neither. 3. Ring your financier and get the exact payout figure today, including any balloon or residual. Then compare. If your realistic sale price clears the payout with something left over, you have choices and you can take your time. If it doesn't, you don't have a car problem, you have a finance problem, and the two need different solutions. That's the point to go and talk to somebody who writes these contracts for a living before you go anywhere near a trade-in desk. And if the gap between a used one and a brand new one is under about $5,000, stop trying to sell privately. You will not win that fight this year. Do that tonight, and by bedtime you'll know something most people who own a ute in this country genuinely don't, whether you're actually in front and by how much. Now, I want to hear the honest version, so here's my ask. What did you buy and what did it cost you? Not the win, the one you'd take back, the launch price ute, the balloon you set too high because the repayment looked nicer, the trade-in you accepted at 4 in the afternoon because you were tired of arguing. I'll go first. I've talked myself into a vehicle on resale reasoning before, and resale reasoning is just a forecast wearing a suit. Put yours below, with the number because somebody reading it is about to sign for exactly the same thing this weekend, and your comment might be the only thing that stops them. And if you work in this, if you appraise trade-ins, write finance, or run a used lot, tell me where I've got it wrong. I've built this from published pricing, sales data and listings, and you've got something I haven't, which is what the offers actually look like across your desk on a Tuesday. Correct me properly and I'll say so. I read the lot, every comment, including the ones that call me an idiot, which is usually where I learn something. One thread I deliberately didn't pull today. What happens to all this when the electric and hydrogen versions of the mainstream utes land here properly and every diesel dual cab in the country becomes the old technology on the same afternoon? I don't know how that plays out. I've got suspicions and not much evidence yet, and I'd rather wait until I have both. Stick around and I'll get to it. Until then, check the payout figure before you check the trade-in offer, not after. It changes which conversation you're having.